author of The Iron Web and the Most Dangerous Superstition, IRS challenger, tax protester, and creator of the upcoming app, The Mirror, Larken Rose.
I'm going to start with a disclaimer. This week I've heard a lot of people talk about nonviolent communication and compassionately talking to people, and I talked about that in my seminar that I did a few days ago. And I just want to warn you that this morning I'm going to be abrasive and offensive and say swear words. Now that might lead you to assume that I disagree with all those people who said those other things, and I actually don't. And so I hope you're not so offended that you run out of the room before the end, because then I'm going to explain why I'm happy that different people use different approaches. Voltaire is quoted to have said that if you want to find out who rules over you, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. And most Americans these days will say, well, sure, that applies to tyrannical regimes and stuff, but here, we're allowed to criticize anybody we want. We're allowed to say bad things about the people in power and stuff like that. And to a certain extent, that's true. For the most part, you can bash the control freaks at the top of the authoritarian empire, and they won't kill you. Every once in a while they will, but usually they won't. However, there is a form of censorship that is more effective and more insidious than old-fashioned state brutality of you criticize us, so we're going to beat you up. And that is the censorship that comes from people censoring each other, from people being indoctrinated to a point where they don't allow others' opinions that clash with things that they were trained to think and assume and basically worship. And I think a good measure of what people dare to say, what people dare to discuss, and sort of the limits of what you're allowed to say in polite company or even impolite company is the way comedians talk, because a lot of comedians go out of their way to be edgy and push the envelope and be as offensive as possible to make people laugh. So where are the areas that they won't go? I mean, they'll talk about poop, and they'll talk about sex, and they'll talk about whatever they can think of that might offend you and make you laugh. But there are places they won't go. Now, admittedly, they will bash politicians. Most of them reserve it for bashing right-leaning authoritarian collectivists and give a pass to the left-leaning authoritarian collectivists, which is a little bit pathetic, but oh well, at least they bash some of them. And some of them will even bash some police, but they usually put in the pathetic bootlicking disclaimer of, well, I'm not saying all police. Most police are brave men and women who yada, 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 blah, 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 but some of them are nasty. So they'll go that far. But there are things they won't say. There are people and there are concepts and beliefs that most comedians, no matter how offensive they like to be, don't dare to say. I'm here to say those things today. And I can think of no better example than fuck the troops. Why do people think that hired mercenaries are so holy and sacred that we're not allowed to point out bad things about them? Everywhere you go, in the news and on TV and on the radio, everyone worships the troops. It's on, stores say, oh, we'll give you a special discount if you're a hired murderer of the state. And you're not allowed to come out, you're not even allowed to come out and point out and show video, look, here are the US troops committing murder. Well, you're a horrible traitor for pointing that out, because we've been indoctrinated to worship a gang of people whose job it is to go to the other side of the world, blow shit up and kill people, and heaven forbid you ever criticize the people who do that. And imagine if they did that here. So much of statist mythology and statism, if you apply it in any other context, you can see that it's utterly insane. For example, somebody says, hey, yeah, I work hard to protect you. Okay, what did you do? Well, there was a bad guy the next neighborhood over. Oh, and you went and stopped him? Yeah, well, how'd you do that? Well, we strafed the neighborhood with bullets for about a month. We dropped several tons of bombs on it. We killed 200 or 300 civilians, but we got the bad guy. Now, who would say, wow, thank you for your service. Thanks for protecting me. Nobody. We'd say, you're a fucking lunatic. Stop doing that. And when people do that to brown people on the other side of the world, it's just as fucking evil. So fuck the troops. And for the people who want to say, but my son is a Marine, how could you maybe you should have fucking taught your son morality instead of blindly obeying the evilest people in the world when they send you to be mercenaries on the other side of the world. Then I wouldn't have to bash him. But they're fighting for our freedom. How much of this statist bullshit are people going to repeat before they think about it? Yeah, because the guy in a cave in Afghanistan, he was totally going to come over here and conquer and enslave all of us, if not for the brave US troops driving around in Humvees on the other side of the world. Yeah, they were definitely going to enslave us. How does anybody believe that? And I made a video called, I forget what it was even called, but about what do you think the troops are protecting us from? What do you really imagine? Literally describe what you think would happen if there weren't US military bases all over the frickin' world. Who do you think is going to come here and forcibly dominate 300 million Americans, 100 million of whom are armed? It's a total freaking joke that we need a military at all, and it's utterly insane to say they fight for our freedom when they work for the one organization that is actually a threat to the freedom of the American people, which is the United States fucking government. And as many people have pointed out, if the troops were actually interested in defending our freedom and in upholding their oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, they would all be invading D.C. I can't believe he would criticize the troops like that. They are out fighting for freedom and spreading democracy. Well, since that came up, fuck democracy. Democracy is a nice term for the majority violently oppressing a minority, and we're taught that that equals freedom. The best example I can think of democracy, pure democracy, direct democracy, is called gang rape, and it's not okay. It's not okay for the majority to force its will on the minority. And of course, what it actually does, and we all know this, but most of the world thinks, yeah, democracy is how we work out our differences. Democracy is what keeps us at war with each other. It keeps us clamoring to government. Please force my neighbors to fund what I believe in. Force them to behave the way I want them to behave. Meanwhile, the neighbor is saying, no, force him to be what I want him to be. Democracy is not freedom. It's the exact opposite. It makes perpetual warfare, and it always will. Now, some people are going to say, this is not a democracy. This is a constitutional republic. Don't worry, we'll get to that. So in addition to they're fighting for our freedom, which is bullshit, and they're spreading democracy, which A, they're not doing, and B, if they were doing, would be evil anyway, one of the most ridiculous things is they're fighting for our flag. Well, since that came up, whoops, where is he? There's lots of things to insult. I'm missing one. Fuck your flag. What? He's insulting Old Glory, Stars and Stripes? Yeah, I am. Do you have any frickin' idea what it is you're worshiping? Well, to me, it represents freedom. Well, to me, it represents tuna noodle casserole. But what does it actually represent? If it represented freedom, would it be flying in front of every office of the biggest extortion racket in the world, the IRS? No. Is anybody who says it means freedom complaining about that? The fact that it flies in front of every DEA office, ATF office, the TSA, it's on all their uniforms, the US military, it's on their uniforms. Does anybody point out, why is it that the oppressors of the US and the world wear the symbol of freedom on their uniforms? Because it's not the symbol of freedom. What is it? I'll give you a hint. It's a hint you've heard about 7 bazillion times. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. A republic is a ruling class. When you pledge allegiance, you are swearing loyalty to your political masters. It doesn't have a goddamn thing to do with freedom. It has to do with Stockholm Syndrome and swearing allegiance to a bunch of control freaks. That's what the flag means. That's what the flag actually represents. It means the territorial jurisdiction of a ruling class. Fuck your flag. And since republics came up, constitutional republic, that's what makes us great and unique and yeah, well, fuck your republic. I was taught for the longest time that that's what makes the U.S. unique. We have a constitution. We get to vote, yeah, but it's a democratic republic. And we have a constitution with a Bill of Rights, and that makes us special. That makes us unique. That makes us great and free. And I'm ashamed to say it was only a few years ago. And by the way, anybody listen to this, you can do painstaking research, as in spending 3 minutes on Google to confirm what I'm about to tell you. Democratically elected constitutional republics with a Bill of Rights, that has been the most dangerous, destructive, oppressive, murderous institution in the history of the world, far, far above anything else ever. And if you don't believe it, let me give you a few examples. Most murderous regime in history, Red China, also known as the People's Republic of China. Yes, they have a constitution. Guess what? Their constitution says they're all allowed to vote. Guess what else? Their constitution has a Bill of Rights. Communist China is a democratically elected constitutional republic. Number two, Soviet Union, also known as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Yep, has a constitution. Yep, it lets them vote. Yep, has a Bill of Rights. The Weimar Republic. Now, most of America is ignorant enough to say, the what? Nazi Germany. It's the thing that turned into Nazi Germany, which was completely constitutional. The Weimar Republic was a democratically elected constitutional republic with a Bill of Rights, and they brilliantly put in a line that said, if things get really bad and there's an emergency, the head doofus gets to suspend civil rights. And guess what? He did. And we got Nazi Germany, thanks to democratically elected constitutional republics. And what is the cliche example today of the most oppressive, backwards regime on the planet? North Korea, also known as the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Look up the frickin' Constitution. Yes, they have one. Yes, they're allowed to vote. Yes, they have a Bill of Rights. No, it didn't do them any fucking good. How dare he blaspheme our Constitution? People talk as if it's actually sacred, and it demonstrates the fact that statism really is a religion, and it really has dogma that people aren't allowed to think about, they're not allowed to question. And so, while we're at that, fuck your Constitution. And when I was growing up, I was taught the mushy-headed thing that the Declaration and the Constitution were sort of the same thing written by the same people and more or less, freedom, yay, hurrah, hurrah. And it was only many years later that I realized, no, the Declaration was pretty dang close to being an anarchist document because the whole point was, hey, you guys who think you have the right to rule us, in that case the British Crown, screw you, you're not the boss of us. Whereas the Constitution was, we're now the boss of you. And I didn't know for the longest time that the main people behind the American Revolution hated the idea of the new Constitution. Thomas Paine, the author of Common Sense, and Patrick Henry, good old give me liberty or give me death, railed against the Constitution and said this is going to be worse than a king very quickly. And guess what? It very quickly became worse than a king. And now on July 4th, you have the ridiculous spectacle of a bunch of Americans waving an American flag, which is a little bit weird because there wasn't an American flag on July 4th, 1776. There wasn't a frickin' United States of America yet, but never mind the foggy-headed stupidity. They're also waving a flag of an authoritarian empire that was created after the Declaration said, we don't like this authoritarian empire, and they're waving the flag of an authoritarian empire that is now many, many times worse and more oppressive and intrusive and unjust than King George ever was. Yes, a constitutional republic was a step in the wrong frickin' direction from having a king. That's how bad they are. And that lovely Constitution created the biggest authoritarian empire in the history of the world, with the biggest war machine in the history of the world, and the biggest extortion racket in the history of the world. And constitutionalists are saying, but if we try it again, it might work. No, it frickin' won't. And by the way, when you sound that, when you say that, you know what you sound like? Communists. Well, constitutional republic didn't work in the US, or the Soviet Union, or China, or North Korea, or any of the other places, but they just didn't do it right. Well, gee, where have I heard that before? If your theory fails every time it's applied to the real world, maybe your theory sucks. Minarchism sucks. It doesn't fucking work. I can't believe he's bad-mouthing our country. It's unpatriotic. It's treasonous. Well, since we're on that, fuck your country. And fuck your loyalty to your country. The idea of a country is what it actually means. Again, it's the territorial jurisdiction of a ruling class. And loyalty to that is trained into the subjects of every empire, every ruling class. They train their subjects to think, we're great, we're awesome, we're special. It really is, patriotism is Stockholm Syndrome. It is feeling an attachment to your political enslavers. And when I ask people, okay, you say you love your country, what the hell do you mean? Is it the people? I mean, there's a bunch of people there that are pretty dang cool. There's a bunch of people there that are obnoxious and a bunch that are downright evil. So I wouldn't draw a line around them and say, these are the good people, but when you go over the line, that's the bad people. That's utterly stupid. Or do you mean the land? There's lots of pretty cool land, but if you step over into Canada, it's still pretty cool. Like, what are you loyal to when you talk about loving your country? What is it that you actually love? And they don't know. They've never thought about it. I didn't think about it when I was all patriotic and a statist. I never thought about it. And it never occurred to me that the entire purpose of getting somebody to feel loyalty to their political jurisdiction they live in, it's like loyalty to your slave plantation. I'm proud to be a slave on this plantation instead of that worse plantation over there. It's a divisive thing. It's about dividing people and having people be at odds with each other. My country's better than yours. And both sides do it. So yeah, patriotism is not at all a good thing. And it makes people say and believe stupid things. Love it or leave it. Which, at least that's not quite as bad as my country, right or wrong, which is I'll be loyal even if we're the evil guys. Like, okay, so people don't say that much anymore, but they do say love it or leave it. Well, do you apply that to like your car and your house? Hey, dude, nice car, but your left rear wheel, it needs air. If you don't like it, you can get out. How about if somebody points out evil shit going on in your country, you try to fix the evil shit instead of bitching at the one who pointed it out? But no. But no, we need blind loyalty to our masters because anything else is treasonous. This guy sounds like a traitor. He's an offense to all of us decent, law-abiding taxpayers. Well, since that came up, fuck law-abiding taxpayers. Every tyrannical regime in history was funded and manned and carried out by law-abiding taxpayers. It is nothing to be proud of. And people don't even think about the terms they use. Law-abiding. That doesn't mean good. It means you're doing whatever the hell the politicians tell you to. Taxpayer. That doesn't mean you give your money to good things. It means you give your money to politicians. It is the essence of Stockholm Syndrome to be proud to say, I do what the politicians tell me and I give them my money. And that's what law-abiding taxpayer means. Every regime, every army, government doesn't create any wealth, it steals it. It steals it from law-abiding taxpayers. Now, I can sympathize with people who get robbed and out of self-preservation go along and they give, they hand over money, like, the victim of a carjacker. If a carjacker steals your car and you give them the keys to avoid getting your head blown off, it doesn't mean you advocate carjacking. And for the people who, pay up to avoid being caged or robbed or whatever else, I can at least understand that when you express pride in it, that's utterly insane. Well, I'm proud to pay my taxes. No, you're not. That's the lie you tell yourself to deny the fact that you're a victim. You're enabling your abuser. And that's why I use the term battered citizen syndrome. Because that's really what it is. It's an exact parallel. Well, yeah, they steal our money and they boss us around and they do all this evil crap. Well, how about we don't have them? No, we can't. I don't know. I can't even picture life without them. And they really love us and they really care and they're trying to take care of us and they'll probably be better soon. And it's sad. It's funny, but it's sad because that's what the American people do. That's what the people of every country do, is they make excuses for their oppressors. And then they take pride in being law-abiding taxpayers and pretend, we're proud to pay my taxes. Really? So if there wasn't a threat, if you were just left in freedom, you'd spend hours filling out long, stupid forms and then give a giant pile of money to the federal government and a pile to the state and a pile to whoever else? Really? And you'd pay for every single thing on the list on what's in the federal budget? Really? You do that voluntarily? No, you wouldn't. You're lying to yourself and you know it. Even if there's some things that you would fund voluntarily, first of all, the government version is always idiotically inefficient and corrupt. But even if there's some things like, roads, I wouldn't mind paying for roads. Cool. What do you mind paying for? Everybody has things that the government does that they don't like, which means everybody who pays taxes doesn't really want what they're forced to pay for. So to pretend I'm proud to pay my taxes, it's sad. It really is an expression of Stockholm Syndrome that I'm going to pretend that I'm going along with this. I'm going to pretend that I like this while I'm being abused because it's too embarrassing to say, yes, I'm a pathetic victim who lets my abuser do whatever the hell he wants to me. And I do nothing to resist, not even speak out, not even condemn his actions. And that's what it is to express pride in being a law-abiding taxpayer. It's to express pride in being a slave, and that's just sad. So yeah, fuck the troops, fuck democracy, fuck your flag, fuck your republic, fuck your constitution, fuck your country, and fuck law-abiding taxpayers. Now, I would like to do a drastic downshift. Put something more pleasant up there. A lot of people, if they heard this rant, or if they read some of my articles or saw some of my videos, one being Message to the Voting Cattle, which is almost as rude as this talk today, but not quite. A lot of people who believe what most people believe and have been taught to respect law and authority and yada, 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 and have been trained into statism will respond to this by saying, he's so hateful and he's so intolerant and it's so divisive. And that shows just how profoundly warped their perception of reality really is. And I can understand why it sounds like I spend so much time being against things, because I am against things. But the reason I'm against things is not from hatred. It's not from intolerance. It's not from trying to be divisive. It's the exact opposite. Government and the belief in authority and democracy and all the things I was talking about, those are based on hatred and intolerance. The word tolerate doesn't mean you like it, doesn't mean you approve of it. It just means you allow it to exist. Nobody who votes for a political master is tolerant. Nobody. Because you are always trying to empower somebody to force your will and your preferences and your values onto others. That isn't tolerance. And the fact that you've been taught that, well, if you do it this way and call it democracy and vote and it's legal, then it's okay. No, it's not. That's the mythology you were taught to trick you into advocating evil and thinking you're compassionate and tolerant. And it's mostly the political left that loves to wear the label of compassionate and tolerant. And I love to point out to them, yeah, you're caring and you love other people and you voted Democrat and you like the welfare state. And so you're some of the people who voted to have me put in a cage for a year for not paying tribute to your political masters. Thanks for being so compassionate. I really appreciate it. And of course, Republicans do the same thing. All candidates do the same thing. Everybody who votes for a politician wants me violently forced to fund whatever they think the state should do. And to be open and fair, I did that too when I was a statist. I voted for people to be robbed for what I thought was important, for what I thought was needed. Meanwhile, I would bash them for trying to vote for people to rob me for what they thought was needed because I was a total freaking hypocrite, as every single statist is. Eventually, I noticed the contradiction, I noticed the hypocrisy, and I started to whittle down what I believed in. Government, all right, yeah, involuntary taxes, that's not okay. And it can't really have a monopoly, because if somebody else says, well, I'll exercise the right of self-defense for you for a fee, you know, they have the right to do that. So it doesn't have a monopoly, it doesn't have a territory, it doesn't have, and I whittled away and said, there, now I have the ideal government, and said, that's not government. I whittled off all of the things that made it count as government, and then I realized I don't believe in government anymore. I can't. It's impossible for it to be legitimate and moral. Now, I talked before at the beginning about how a lot of people, including me at other times, want to be gentle and invite people to think about concepts, and they say, like, don't be offensive and don't offend people. I'm really glad to have a bunch of people doing it different ways. And I do it different ways myself. So I don't at all think everybody should do it the way I'm doing it. No, everybody should do it whatever way they think is best, whatever way they're best at, and whatever gets the best results. I happen to believe that if nothing else works, people should feel guilty. They should feel bad. They should feel insulted and condemned for advocating evil. Why does war happen? Because people worship the troops. And people feel good about signing up to become the troops. If half their neighbors said, ew, you're joining that violent, evil gang, well, don't ever talk to me again, you psycho, they wouldn't do it. They need the peer pressure that says, what you're doing is fucking evil, stop it. And if you can gently talk them into that beforehand, outstanding, then I don't need to offend them. But obviously, that hasn't stopped it yet. So if the choices are offend the hell out of them to make them maybe think, even if they get defensive, even if they hate me, by the way, I don't care if anybody hates me. If I can make them think about something and they think I'm the most horrible person in the world, I don't care. They thought about something, and they might change their mind. Incidentally, I know a lot of former Marines who are now anarchists, some who saw combat and some who didn't, and several of them have told me, yeah, I needed someone bashing the hell out of me, because of all the worship and all the praise and everybody thanking me for my service. And now I know a bunch of former military people who are embarrassed as hell when somebody thanks them for their service. Like, who do you think I served? I didn't serve you by going and terrorizing people on the other side of the world and kicking in doors and pointing machine guns at people's faces. They weren't coming here. They weren't going to attack us. I was serving the giant ruling class and its corporate buddies, and that's all. And along that line, I highly recommend a book called War is a Racket by Smedley Butler, who was, at the time of his death, the most decorated Marine in history, who had like 30 years of combat experience and finally figured out, wow, I'm just a tool for some of the evilest people in the world. So sometimes I point to that because people say, well, if you haven't served, you can't criticize. And if I haven't been a serial killer, I can't criticize them either? That's an interesting standard. But these things that are felt sacred by people, the Constitution and the flag and yada yada, everything I just went out of my way to insult, that is the mind control, that is the indoctrination that is necessary for evil to continue, and it's why I bash it. You know, the whole notion of nationalism, and like my country's better and your country's that. You can't get giant groups of people to have wars with each other unless you fabricate a distinction. This is team A, this is team B. You know, imagine there aren't national boundaries and people are living their lives and somebody says, we really need to like go kill the people that live on the other side of the world. You say, what? What are you talking about? Like, instead of, well, we'll draw a line around them. That's called Russia. This is called the US. These people should all be scared of those people. Meanwhile, their ruling class is saying, these people should all be scared of those people. Nationalism is totally a divide and conquer tactic. Everything government does is based on fear and hatred and intolerance and divisiveness. They can't function any other way. Who the hell would say, yes, you can have power over me, if the guy didn't first say something really, really scary is going to happen unless you give me power over you? They have to keep us afraid. Who the hell it would feel like, we're safe, we're happy, everything's going fine. You know what we need is a big, violent, dominating psycho stealing our money and bossing us around. And so government and the belief in authority, that is what is intolerant. That is what is hateful. And here's the part I don't usually talk about, and I should more often. It's more fun to just rant and rail. First of all, what I hate is not the people. It is the ideas. It is the insane superstition of authority and government and all that goes along with it, all the political mythology we were taught. Why I bash those things? Yes, I'm very much against those things. But why? Why bother to be against them? I bash those things. I spend my whole life bashing those things in one way or another, not because I hate those people, but because I love humanity. And I see what humanity is supposed to be. And I see the millions of people kept in cages for having the wrong plant. And I see the hundreds and thousands or millions of people who are killed as a result of nationalism and authoritarianism. And I care about those people because they're human beings. I rail and rant and rave and get angry because those are human beings, real human beings, going through that, being subjected to that. And yeah, that pisses me off, and it makes me rant and rave because I have compassion, because I have empathy, because I actually love humanity. And ideas that are antithetical to humanity, ideas that are literally murdering millions of people, they have to be condemned. They have to be done away with. But I think it is worth pointing out why I do that and the love behind it. Because I may not sound very loving when I'm standing up here insulting everything that so many people hold dear, but it really is from that. It's because what people hold dear, they were trained to hold dear, to make them into slaves, to make them into agents of evil, to make them into cheerleaders for authoritarian domination. And that's not okay. And that's not what humanity is supposed to be. That's why I bash this. That's why I rail against it pretty much 24 hours a day. Because I know what humanity is supposed to be. Because I can imagine a world of peaceful coexistence, like we all can. And because I see what we have instead, and it's evil, and it's horrendous, and it has to change. I bash authoritarianism because I love humanity. That is why I insult people's bad beliefs. That is why I'm an anarchist. Thank you.
In a world where Antifa riots in the city streets, cops rage out of control, and the leader of the free world is a fat-ass casino owner, one event stands alone to make anarchy great again.
I actually love humanity. That is why I'm an anarchist.
Backwards in the building like we the ceiling, we illin'. No matter who find it appealing, I'm here and I got a feeling that we'll be dealing a lot of pain with a penicillin get drilled in your head. That we are monsters and yeah, we come from the slums and for months we've been pumped, but for once I am now comfortable. I want to grow, I want some more success, and I want to know that greatness can't be rushed, can't be less, so face the bus. Feel free to hate on us, we lace them up. Dudes, we done paid them up. Keep snakes away from us and safe from us, you might wanna be. Remember when clowns used to make fun of me and that they wanna be me, see me and they run at me. I'm gonna be the greatest, yeah I wanna be, but I am not the one to be the fakest for the sake of being played. I'm here like I never left, set to hell. Nah, cause I can't just fail, so just prepare your ears, it'll get for real. Okay, from here, we will never take the sell, it's grind time. My mind and my thoughts, my highs and my faults, my wins and my loss. When will I fall off? It's a test for me. You are now listening to Veracity. Yeah.
Fuck the media, fuck the banks, fuck drone strikes, fuck tanks, fuck hunger, fuck war, fuck ignoring of the poor, fuck the left, fuck the right, fuck the government. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.